Extraordinary. And we have a back channel for this one too that we just made. It is called ASB Online. Okay, ASB Online. So Brian will answer all your questions at the end as well. There you go.
I'm kind of losing my voice because of teaching kids and having 15 other people watching you teach, and the pressure was on. It was crazy. And meeting old friends. And how many of you have been at a lot of these sessions all throughout the day, the R&D kind of report thing? So I don't have to tell you about R&D and how we're trying to look at trends in education and see how it might apply to what we're doing at ASB. And the idea is that the R&D teams were out there in small groups researching things really quickly. So 3, 4, 5 teachers, we go explore something, find whatever we can, and then just report back to the school. And then they take it and throw it in the garbage can. Okay. No, but this is the best R&D team because this one was successful. So of the other R&D teams, they researched something, they designed something, and they said, maybe someday in the future we can do this. And we said, no, we're doing it now, and we're already doing it, and we can only do it better. So it was an interesting thing to research.
Wow.
I made it up
Shelby
weeks
just
ago.
pulled me over here.
Basically, that's it. Researching current practices in education, and probably the question is why online blended learning? Why, when we're a brick and mortar school and we have great teachers doing interesting things, why do we want to look at this? And part of the reason was just because it was out there. And it's growing so fast that we thought it's important to find out if there's any way that we can take advantage of it at our school, or if we want to take advantage of it at our school. So the first thing we had to do was find a definition, and I don't want to bore you because you're all text experts, and finding a definition of online learning was easy. It's just learning online. And we started to separate it into having all of the content online, and that would be our thinking of what online learning was. So all of the content and perhaps most of the teaching happening online. And then blended learning was where it was any combination of face-to-face teaching with learning happening online. And that could vary from someone using Khan Academy in their classroom once a week, and that's a blended element, to somebody who's really bought an entire course online, but they're acting as the teacher in the classroom with this online content. So a real range in blended learning. But we also wanted to we stole this definition, I don't know where we stole it from, Anacal. Oh, you're here. Why don't you do that? We co-chaired this committee. In fact, actually you chaired the committee and I sat by your side. But this definition of blended learning we thought was a little bit more philosophical, and it wasn't about amount of time online as opposed to amount of time in the classroom, but the idea that it was a philosophy that wanted to take the best of what's online with the best of what's happening in the classroom and really come up with something that was constructivist, interesting, student-centered, that was the best of what we thought education was going to be, whether it was 90% of time spent online or 1% of time spent online. But it was the philosophy behind it. So our research, we were looking everywhere. ERIC, databases, research that was done by Anacal, various books that Shabby was so nice to give us, online learning, probably 100 books. I read the back cover of 3 of them, and they looked like interesting books. The interesting thing about the research, what we found pretty quickly, was that a lot of the actual educational research going into it wasn't very definitive, and it was mostly being done based on adult online learning, because up until just recently, it was mostly adults taking online courses. So we didn't know if a lot of the research was applicable to what we were trying to do in the classroom. And then the other thing we found from our research was that it was certainly interesting. Online learning options are available in all 50 states. In 2009, 1.5 million K-12 students were engaged in some form of online learning. There are 38 states right now in the U.S. That offer full-time online learning, that you don't have to ever walk into a school building, and you can do your public education online. We just thought that this stat was certainly intriguing and worth looking at. But there was some not so good. And this is, I'm not citing these sources, but there's all sorts of data out there that suggests things like only 27% of privately managed online schools achieved adequate yearly progress on standardized tests. You can take that for what it may or may not be. Research shows that online courses have a dropout rate, a higher dropout rate than face-to-face courses. Most research into online learning has been conducted in relation to adult learners, like they said before. It's not really relevant to what we're doing. However, all of these results have howevers attached to them. Why are people using online learning in the States? Often it's to reach those kids who were dropping out already. So you'll have a higher dropout rate because they were already out of school, they were already at risk. Online learning is often used to reach kids that are too far from a school to get into the building. So again, these are kids that are difficult to reach in the first place. So sometimes it's hard to hold on to them. Even in terms of dropout rate with adult learners take online courses because they want to, so therefore they often stay in online courses. But then as soon as they don't want to take it anymore, they just walk out the door because they're adults and they can do that. And you can do that now too if you want. You don't have to stay here even though we're face to face. So we thought that even the not so good that we saw, it didn't really discourage us from continuing to look at online learning and how we might use it at school. We found through most of the research that what it can be is personalized. I think first and foremost that with the options available for online learning, students can find things to take that they want to take and that might not be offered in a brick and mortar building or in a face-to-face situation. They're here at school and they want to take Mandarin, for example, and they find an online course, or they're here, we don't offer a photography course, and there's a photography course online. They can personalize their learning in some way through online. It's also, there were interesting studies about increased time on task, that they found that online learners in general spent more time working at their learning. So they spent more time reading, they spent more time writing responses, whether it was on a forum or in an email to an instructor. And that time on task is so significant to learning that that's half our battle in any classroom. If we can get them to do the work, then they're going to learn. So we thought that was kind of interesting. And it also seemed to imply that if there's increased time on task, they must be somehow motivated to spend that time on task. So they're either motivated by the course content or even perhaps the environment. And that's more the last one to the environment, is that it's interactive and global. And that's kind of what we like to think our face-to-face learning is here. We've got kids from 50 different nations, you know, the usual thing. We're interactive in the classroom, and we thought, you know, really online is a little model of what we're trying to be in some ways face-to-face. So the environment itself seems to fit possibly with this kind of interactive and global model. This is more related to the personalized. There's just so much out there, and that's really what our research told us. Just a few snapshots here. There's the artificial intelligence course that you might have heard of that was being offered through Stanford. There's digital photography courses. Down at the bottom are some happy students who graduated from an online face-to-face at Johns Hopkins. There are online PE courses, and the more we started to read about these things, we just got excited. We weren't really so concerned with some of the lukewarm research or research that kept pointing in one direction and then another. We just thought that these courses looked cool. With the online PE courses, kids have heart rate monitors and things like that that automatically upload online and keep track of what they're doing. So they're actually working out together, working out maybe under the supervision of a PE teacher, but all this other course content and all their stats are going online. We're like, ah, that's cool. I could use that to train for my next 4K run. So we thought basically that the school should grab a hold of the things that are out there, that we could have a dynamic group of online offerings for students, that it would be an enhancement of an excellent face-to-face program. That was pretty important. It wasn't taking away from what we're doing, but adding something to what we're doing. And an extension beyond our physical walls, that we're not just ASB here in the building, but we're broader than that. And then we also thought it was important to somehow find a mentor that could provide direction to the program and direction to the students. Partly that's because we do these things because we can't offer everything. We're kind of a small school. We can't necessarily offer a photography course, or we can't necessarily offer a Mandarin course. We've already had kids taking online courses because maybe they failed my English course senior year and they had to quickly take another English course so that they could graduate. Or they, let's see, what's another example? They came from another school, they're doing IB, and they couldn't continue with an IB option they had in another school, and through Pomoja they could take an online course through IB. So we had kids doing those things, and we said, why not expand these offerings to everyone? We also felt that we needed to set something up where we could evaluate the courses, because there are some online courses out there that are very much like a teacher-driven course, where here's the content, learn it, take the test, and then you're done. And we said we certainly don't want that, because we didn't want to say just because it's online it's good. We want to have an educational, pedagogical model that matches with our philosophy, and then we want to find good content. So we wanted French teachers to evaluate the French program, history teachers to evaluate a history course, and we also wanted pedagogical people, online or even face-to-face, to be looking into the practice that was happening online. We also thought we wanted to kind of make, we couldn't just say to kids, hey, go out and find an online course, and if you like it, you can do it, because that wouldn't work. So we had to have a selection of courses that they could take. So if we were offering electives in high school, we could say, here are 6 exciting electives, you can take one of them, 2, for example, as an elective credit. And then most of the research says that online learning works best with support, that if it's just a kid alone on the computer, they're not going to do as well as if they have some mentor who can say, how are you doing on your online course? Is everything going okay? Do you need me to get a hold of your instructor? Just whatever any kind of educational mentor would do. So in conclusion, we're really committed to a brick and mortar school here that enhances 21st century learning, what we are doing. And again, I think part of the reason we were making that point is because we're a bunch of teachers and we don't want to lose our jobs. I'm not really qualified to become the super teacher who's the one teacher online and thousands of kids around the world are taking my course. That's not going to work out for me. So I want kids in the classroom, but we also think it's really important what the kids are doing here in the building, and we also think that you can go both directions. And we kind of think of it as the Stanford model, where Stanford is still Stanford, and it's there. And they were, I don't even know if they won the contract in New York or lost, but you know, they're bidding to build buildings in New York City, and they're committed to being a physical institution with teachers in the classroom. But at the same time, they're committed to saying, here's a teacher who wants to do an online course that's open to everyone. And they're realizing that we're not exactly sure what this is all going to become, but we're not saying this one's good in the only way, or this one's good in the only way, but how can we do both of them together? And then that goes along with the second one. And finally, it can only enrich in our program. Yeah, we'll take questions.
Getting back to your teacher, I don't want to lose my job, administratively, question is like, how do you set this up? So you have a language teacher who's partially
Yeah, it's an interesting, I think if, you could speak to this too because you're doing some of the language things, but I think first we kind of wanted with all these committees to think way up here. I keep saying, what is it, 30,000, 20, I don't know, many thousand feet up there, yeah, and not on the ground. So we're thinking, you know, what are the great things that we want to do, and it's the administration's problem to figure out how that's going to work. But the other thing is that we think there are probably hard choices to make because I joked about not wanting to lose my job, but it might come down to you do have a more streamlined school, and I don't know how that would be structured, where some things are offered only online, and we'd have to think a lot about the mentoring. We were sort of in our minds thinking of a mentor who could handle a variety of subjects and is more of a educational support throughout many subjects, but Andrea's been doing it a bit, so.
Well,
I was thinking more between disciplines.
right now we have a policy that tells us who can take what courses, and we want to stick with what we're doing because what we're doing is good. We're not saying it's not good and so we're going to enhance it with online learning. What we're doing is good and we're going to keep that. Now if we have students who want to go beyond that or who need help, then online learning comes in there. I can speak for modern languages. We teach French and Spanish and that's not going to change. But if a student wants to come in and she wants to learn Swedish, which I have right now, she brought her course. Now what we want to do is make sure that that course she's taking is a good course. It's been evaluated by her school in Finland, so it would be a good course right now for us to see, well, what do they think is a good course? But what we want to get is someone who can help us evaluate courses, because if that's what we're doing on top of teaching, we're going to be overwhelmed.
And then how do you find the right coach for her? You don't have someone have a linguist, language teacher. How do you, I guess, as the head of a school, I'm thinking, what do I tell parents when they're paying tuition?
But that's the thing, are they paying tuition for the online course? Or, because in our case, our policy is that if they want to take an online course, they have to pay for it. So,
well, that's yet another issue because they're saying, if we do offer a number of online courses, what I'd like to offer more that have requirements. How do they, parents, if they're paying additional, they say, I'm already paying this much, now you're paying more. Even if they're not, they will say, I don't have to pay anymore. But what is my student getting out of your school?
Yeah, a couple.
Sorry. It's about how to be. Don't throw your child in our school. I mean, this is the menu we offer. You want something extra, you got things.
We look at it kind of like this, that if we bought the entire online course, that includes a teacher. So their actual teacher is in cyberspace somewhere. So the person that we would have in the building would be the support that we offer as a school, sort of learning support. So my thought it would not have to be, it would be impossible to be a subject, yeah. The other thing is, it depends on what direction we move in. If we move to a point where we said, for example, you do not have to take music if you don't want to. You can take online, I don't know, online photography. In that case, the way I imagine it would be that the school would, included in their tuition, would be us, the school, paying for that online course. In addition, we'd be paying for the mentorship that they get in the school to help with the online course. So a lot of it depends on what direction you decide to go in. You know, it becomes tricky when it's about replacing a failed course or issues like that. You have to have a policy in place. But the teachers out there, the tuition could theoretically cover it as well.
We've been doing this for a few years. I'd like your input in a couple of cases. Initially, we said that they could take it on with electives that we didn't teach in our school. But that's now been challenged, and I still think that's a good policy. But what do you think about taking more than one online course per year, because that was our initial part of our policy. The second thing I didn't anticipate was that we would have children in the younger grades, 9th and 10th grade, to want to take the AP courses, AP music theory, AP, things that we don't offer to bump up their GPA. So how are you handling, and I'm not saying that it's bad, it's just questioning how is this.
Part of it is we're not doing it yet, and that's the only thing we're doing now is we have a few one-off cases where kids are taking, something they needed to make up, or the case with psychology. We offer psychology in the building, and these kids just couldn't get it into their schedule. They'd already started it, so they were taking online. So we haven't. All of these are supposed to be in the R&D, research and development phase, but these issues have come up because that's one of the things that people would want to use it for is enhancement and jumping ahead, and we'd have to have a pretty strict policy, I think, in place in the high school, especially about what this means for GPA, what we're going to allow and not allow, and where we're going to say, what happens when, forget electives, but what happens when kids are going into 11th grade English and they say, we just don't want Chanin, the online course is better, because Pomoja, for example, the IB, they're going to offer English in a year. And so, if on the one hand we're saying these are great and we'll give you credit for it, shouldn't they then be able to say, so it's almost as if the school itself says, ultimately we have the most faith in what we're doing here, and we will enhance here, and you, parent and child, can't make the decision over that being better than this. And if that's the case, that you think all of these courses simply online are better than this, then they'll take your money and you can.
We have a policy, and we were going to open it up to that, and then we came up with all these questions, and we're like, no, we can't.
When you were looking at the research, did you look at all about the increasing prevalence of online courses in colleges? And the idea that maybe one of the reasons that you might consider having an online component was as another way to prepare kids for college coursework?
Yes. We did, and that's where a lot of the research is being done on online college courses and that kind of adult learning. We sort of had a rift on it. It was right here. Between wanting to perhaps suggest requiring online courses for that preparation for that, and not wanting to. And what you can speak to wanting to if you want.
Well, I wanted to research, for the same thing you said, I thought it would be great to have them all have one requirement where they would be exposed to it. And we as teachers, we're here to support them and tell them, guide them as to how to take an online course so that when they go to college, they'll be successful at it. Because a lot of reasons why people drop out of online courses is because they don't know how to take them in the first place. So if we teach them and guide them, I think they'd be more successful. However,
I think, how hard is it? You click a button, come on. And I'm kidding, but not really kidding. And part of what I thought was that we do a lot of blended learning. So even in my face-to-face classroom, the kids are constantly writing on an online forum. They're watching videos online and responding to them on the forum. I go to a meeting somewhere, I'm at a conference, and I leave videos behind for them to watch, and then they go into a Dropbox folder where they get the reading. They do the reading, they respond on the forum. I'm thousands of miles away. I get on the forum, sometimes live, and say, you guys aren't really doing much right now. So as far as I'm concerned, because of the nature of our school, they know how to deal with the online experience. So we wouldn't have to require it for the experience. So I don't know which way is right. Thanks for coming. One more question.
I'm running some online with PJE, JITA, at the British International School. Is there anyone else here that's doing that? Anyone else running online courses?
Couldn't get the sound well.
I've got some students doing online courses through Promoter Education at British International School in JITA. I'm just wondering if there's anyone else that's got students already involved.
We've had.